Alright guys, today we're still in Judges and we're still talking about Gideon. We're going to still talk about Gideon tomorrow too. I kind of can't wait for tomorrow, but we got to get to today first. We don't want to miss this part. This should be short today. I'm going to go back to Judges 6 and then come back into Judges 7, okay? So Judges 6, verse 36, Gideon says to God, "If you will save Israel by my hands, as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you said." And that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next morning. He squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, and a bowl full of water came out. But that wasn't enough for Gideon. He goes on, "Then Gideon said to God, 'Don't be angry with me, but let me just make one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. This time make the fleece dry and the ground covered with dew.' That night God did so, only the fleece was dry, all the ground was covered with dew." Okay, so remember this. He tested God. This isn't testing God. This is testing God's will. Like the Bible says, you're not to test the Lord your God. I think testing the Lord your God is like, I'm going to jump off this cliff, and if God saves me, I'm supposed to live. That's testing God. This is trying to find God's will. Gideon is trying to make sure, like, I'm the weakest. I'm from the weakest clan. I'm the least of my weakest clan. Are you really sure this is what you want me to do, God? Because I really don't. There's some times where I feel like, God, are you really sure you want me to do this? Because I don't want to be out of your will. I want to be in your will. How do I know that this is really what you want me to do? And if it's not what you want me to do, God, tell me, because I don't want to be anywhere but in your will. And I believe Gideon had a good heart with this. He really wanted to make sure, you know, this is a big task God is asking Gideon to do, and he wants to make sure he's really hearing from God. And I love that God listened to him, and God talked to him, and God showed him what he asked. So we're going to jump back into chapter 7 where we have been. And Gideon has just his 300 men. Remember, God had said, get rid of all the rest. I think yesterday I said 2,000 men left, but it was 22,000 men left. Anyways, we're going to start at verse 9. Chapter 7, verse 9. This is Judges 7, verse 9. During the night, the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands." And he's talking about the Midians, because the Midians were down below. "Get up, go down against the camp, because I'm giving it into your hands." But then God says this, and I love this part. "If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah and listen to what they are saying. Afterwards, you will be encouraged to attack." And Gideon goes down and he listens, and one of the soldiers down there has this dream about, like, this great big loaf of barley bread rolling down the mountain and, like, wiping out the tents. And the other soldiers, like, oh my gosh, that's got to be the sword of Gideon. God is with Gideon, and they're gonna basically destroy us. So that gave Gideon so much courage, and he worshiped God, and he got his men around, and he's like, all right, let's go. But God gave him courage. Sometimes we don't have courage to do what God has asked us to do, but I believe if we seek and we ask God, Lord, if you really want me to do this, please give me the courage that I need to take this step. And I love the fact that after God gave him courage, Gideon worshiped. Then Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation. This is verse 15. He worshiped God, and he called to the camp of Israel and said, "Get up. The Lord has given it to us." He worshiped. Lord, guys, God is willing. He's, like, we don't have to fear if we question God and we are really trying to seek. It's when we seek God that he really speaks to us. you know, I don't think we should do anything willy-nilly. We should seek God with all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our mind. And Gideon did that because this was a scary move for Gideon. Remember, we found him in the wine press threshing his wheat, hiding. And he looked at himself and he saw this nothing of a person, yet God saw him as a mighty warrior. But God built that into him. He took time. He took time to encourage Gideon. He gave Gideon a smaller job. At first, Gideon took down the Asher poles and the Baal altars in the night, because again, he was afraid. But he did it. He did the small battle for God. And then God gave him this next battle. And he gave it to him with he's just what he needed so that God's glory could be shown. And because we don't have that much strength of our own, God knows that we may be afraid. And so he said, if you're afraid, go down and listen. And I think sometimes he says, if you're afraid, open your word and listen. I'll give you the courage you need. I'll give you the courage you need. And then when we get that courage, we worship, because we should never do anything without worship. We have a spiritual battle. I'm not saying we're going out to annihilate people. We have the love of Christ, and our battle is also oftentimes to love people. Sometimes it's hard to love people who are different. You know, maybe God's putting somebody difficult in your life, and you're saying, you really want me to help this person, God? Are you sure you want me to help this person? Because, man, they're a tough crowd. I don't know what your battle is today. You know, I don't know how you're feeling today, what your worthiness level is today. You know, sometimes we can become so haughty and think we're amazing, and then other days our worthy level is like on empty, and we feel like we don't have any value at all. But God sees our value at all times, but he also sees how great and mighty his strength is, and he reveals his glory through us, and he will give us the courage to face the things we need to face. And so seek God, ask him to give you courage, and then worship him. Don't forget to worship him, and then take your step. Take your step into battle. Take your step wherever he asks you to go. Seek him for courage, worship him, and take your step. Because he's a good God, and he wants to communicate with us, and he wants to hear from us, and he wants to help us. He wants to support us. He wants to encourage us, and he will give us strength. And he will give us courage. He tells us, do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you. He is with us. We don't have to be afraid. And if we're afraid, we can go to the word, and he will give us the courage we need. And then we can worship, and we can take our step into battle. So I pray that you would go today and be strong. Know that your value comes from the Lord, and he loves you so much. And no matter what the enemy says or whispers in your ear today, whether you've made mistakes, or you're discouraged that you didn't do something well enough yesterday, or you know, maybe you failed at something, or whatever the enemy's using to tear you down, remember that you have a God that loves you, and how even mightier is his grace, because he loves you in spite of all that, in spite of our mistakes and our accidents, in spite of our weakness. He loves us, and he desires to use us. So be encouraged today. God will give you strength, and he will be your courage. Worship and go out. God bless, guys.